Hello, my friends. Welcome to the year 2020. Happy New Year to you and your family and friends, your training group, everybody. It's going to be a great and wonderful new year. Every new year is a fresh new start, a new calendar date. We can tear off the past and work on our futures, which is something we all strive for. I wanted to make a quick video. I'm at home right now. Nice fire behind me. Getting over a cold. I've had a cold for about a week and a half now. But it's nice to be home with family, friends, and loved ones and just have some time away from the rigmarole of training all the time at the dojo. Being self-employed, owning a dojo full-time, I don't get much vacation, so it's nice to have a full week off where I just get to do stuff that I want to do, music, time with family and loved ones. You can let your beard grow, let your hair grow out. I don't have much more on the top, but just kind of enjoy great conversation and food with friends. A nice warm fire here behind me because it's cold out tonight. But I wanted to do a Q and A because we've had a lot of questions come in. This time of year, a lot of you are at home. You have some time off from your job, perhaps. So I get a lot of questions on YouTube comments, Instagram, emails. People write to me. So I have a couple questions I wrote down that are fairly common, and I'll go over these. If I have answered these before, excuse me for answering them again. But a lot of people who don't train, sometimes they get more out of these types of videos where we're just talking, you and I, back and forth, because if you don't train physically, sometimes you have issues in your life. We all have the same types of problems in our life. And martial art, not the training itself, but the mental aspects of martial arts can help us all. You don't have to have a dojo. You don't have to go to a dojo to benefit and reap the benefits of the martial art and the warrior mindset, which we'll go over a little bit later. But I think you'll agree with me that you don't have to train physically to have a mentally strong mind or a spiritually strong persona that can carry you through life. And a lot of the things that I found from my training since I was just a child was the samurai, the way of the warrior, the way of Bushido has helped me in so many positive ways, far outweigh the negative. So these questions that you ask me, I have asked myself 1,000 times, answered 1,000 different ways, and the older that I get, I answer them differently than when I was 10, 20, 30. GTD Firearms LLC writes, which do you enjoy more? Do you like hand-to-hand combat, traditional weapons like blades, or do you like firearms? GTD, thanks for the question. I like all weapons, and that's not a cop-out. I really, really enjoy or learned to enjoy all kinds of weapons. Now, when I was a kid, I loved the sword more than anything, because of those cheesy 1980s ninja movies. But as I got older, I learned through good teachers how to cherish each and every type of weapon, whether it's a flexible weapon, a stick, a sword, a firearm. Being a self-defense instructor myself for many, many years, I do believe that it would be smart to learn firearms because they are plentiful, especially here in America. You need to know how to use modern weapons if you're going to call yourself a martial artist. It would be kind of foolish to just practice swords and sticks and stuff when firearms are in many, many households in America and around the world. And depending on where you live in the world, they're more prevalent. So you need to know how to use pistols and rifles and shotguns and how to change the magazines around and stuff like that, how to know where the safety is, basics of self-defense. So I myself go to the range, not as often that I wish I could, but I go every couple weeks and I practice firearms, sometimes long guns, sometimes short guns. I do have a license to carry, which is something you can get here in America. So I do often carry because it's a heck of a good weapon. And if something were to happen, I want to be prepared, and I want to be someone who may be able to save someone else's life if I had to. It's very rare, although strangely enough, I walk around with a sword quite a bit, because I own the school, but Firearms, and this guy, GTG Firearms LLC, I assume is probably a dealer of firearms. So to answer your question, I like all weapons. I really believe training with weapons is important to round out and balance out your martial art training. There are some martial arts who don't touch weapons at all, and I believe that's a defect. I believe that's a system that's going to get very boring very fast. So when you learn weapons, you learn timing and distancing and spatial awareness and hyper focus on where the blades are, where the bullets are, and stuff like that. And you can really get better at unarmed martial arts the more weapons that you put in your hand, all different types. Don't ever limit yourself to a certain type of weapon or have a favorite weapon. Learn to love them all, because you never know in a self-defense situation what will be available to you. So if all I have here is this cup of tea, this has to be a shuriken, it has to be a weapon. Or can you defend yourself with anything in sight? We're not always going to be surrounded, next to a sword or anything. So it's a good question, but I personally believe you should learn firearms. You should learn all types of weapons, and it's really, really fun. It's extremely fun to learn weapons, so don't limit yourself. Aeneas 10 writes, a correctly done Jujigatami, Gogoplata, and Omoplata. Color me impressed. You're obviously an above average school. I have been doing ground techniques since the 1990s. Yes, we do ground techniques in our martial art. Ground techniques, remember that BJJ, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, came from Jiu-Jitsu and Judo. It's a it's a new martial art, but the roots of Samurai Budo are far older. So ground fighting, if you read the books of the samurai and the ninja, it was discouraged because you were on a battlefield. So if you fell down in the mud, you were considered a dead man. It actually says that in several of the scrolls. Man down equals dead man, because back then they had spears and bows and arrows and pole arms, and if you fell off your horse, there's no such thing as a ground fight. You just get killed by 5 more warriors. So the sport of BJJ, which has become very popular, we have many ground movements that we practice in our dojo that are not part of ninjutsu, so to speak, or Budo, but they're very old and they're very practical. However, in a self-defense situation, you don't want to be on the ground because your sense of awareness of space and who's around you completely goes away. You get tunnel vision because you and another person are grappling on the ground, so a lot of the times your back is facing up and you're kind of busy and a half guard or something, you're not paying attention. If you're fighting someone on the ground and his brother comes up, you're in big trouble because you're going to get a boot to the head or a 2x4 from somebody. You don't know if there are multiple attackers. And my ground fighting friends, I've always said, do you guys ever practice this on the cement and the tar? And they're like, no. I'm like, you should, because I have, and your body gets completely wrecked and torn up after about 20 seconds of rolling on the cement. It's not like we're in a safe dojo with nice vinyl mats. It doesn't work that way on the street. It's nasty. It's messy. You don't want to be down in a Jujigatami armbar when some guy pulls a knife out of his pocket that you can't see, and he starts to stab you because you weren't paying attention, because you were hugging his arm trying to break it, and you weren't paying attention to his other pocket. It's completely impractical to be on the ground in self-defense. Many fights do end up on the ground, so you should know what you're doing. You can't just be a stand-up martial art and expect to be a well-rounded martial art. You have to learn ground defenses. But it's something we don't concentrate as much on as many other things because it's not as practical to be on the ground in self-defense. You want to get up and assess the situation as quick as you can. Now, I have a lot of friends who do jiu-jitsu and BJJ, and I love them. It's a fantastic art. I was obsessed with it about 20 years ago. Remember, I'm 50 years old. I know I don't look it, but I'm 50. So when I was 20, I was doing ground fighting. and I was in all kinds of tussles and stuff, and we would learn all the different moves of jiu-jitsu, and we would do them backwards, and we'd compete, and we would roll, and we'd have rounds, and we'd spar and everything, tap each other out thousands of times. But as you get older, you train differently. I don't train the same as I did when I was 20 because I'm older. My body's not in the same shape it was in when I was 20. I know a lot more. I know what's effective and what isn't. My martial arts skill has improved vastly since I was 20, so I don't have to use the strength that I used to use, and the speed and the muscle and the size of my body. I don't have to use that as much anymore because I've refined my martial art. So if you're young and you're doing ground fighting, fantastic, keep going. Be careful of your body. I myself have had 2 back surgeries from training, from judo throws and ground fighting and rolling and stuff on cement. And I caution you to train very carefully. Do not use too much strength, because if you get a bad shoulder, a bad back, it can ruin your martial art career. And sadly, I know of too many people who have done jiu-jitsu who by the time they're 35 have arthritis and all kinds of issues with their body. And it makes them a very painful and full of suffering 40s, 50s, 60s, and 70s. Be very careful. If you're going to ground fight, do it in an environment where you have good teachers, where you can take your time, let go of your ego when you're sparring on the ground. But ground fighting, I highly recommend to all martial arts schools. At least do 10 or 20 moves in your curriculum, so that when you do fall down, you're not completely lost and scared. Ibrahim Khalil writes, is there any iron fist conditioning in ninjutsu? I don't think so, Ibrahim. I don't think there's any iron fist in ninjutsu. I've never heard of that. When I was younger, I would condition my hands a lot. I would punch trees and stuff and makiwara, but that is very, very bad for your joints over long periods of time. Yes, it can toughen up your skin, can get your calluses tough for punching, but I don't recommend that in a long-term martial art regimen. Yes, it is important to do target work. We do target work every day at our dojo, where you're hitting targets, kicking targets, elbows, headbutts, you name it, because you do have to condition yourself for the impact of a fight. You don't want to hit someone and have your hand break, or have the shock of the impact affect your hand, that you would get scared or you wouldn't be able to continue. So some conditioning is necessary, but not this stuff where they punch into dirt. I've seen it on documentaries and stuff, and I think it's very weird to sit there and punch sand all the time. First of all, you can't keep up with that. After about, again, 2 weeks, you're going to stop that. You're going to go on to something else. You're going to make your hands bleed. You have to function in the world. You have to pick up a pen, and you have to learn how to use a keyboard. So if your hand is constantly in a claw because you've been hitting stones for the last 2 years, it's not very bright in my opinion. You have to think long term. But there should be some conditioning. You don't want to be a wimpy, weak person where, you can't hit someone or you get all bent out of shape and you give up. So you have to have a balance, as is with most things in martial arts. Jared asks, the ninja did have magic that could change weather. They could become animals. They could summon supernatural powers with enough training. Jared, do you really believe that? I would ask, what evidence could you show me that the ninja could change weather, or they could become animals, or they could summon supernatural powers? First of all, what is supernatural? You would probably say, well, it's outside of the natural world. Well, I would say, well, what does that look like? How can you show that to me? This is just, with all due respect, you're watching too many movies. You're living in a fantasy world. Human beings cannot do this stuff. And if you were training in my school, I would dispel those myths very quickly, because I want to get down to the real training. And too many people are watching too many movies, reading too many books, watching too much manga and anime, and they think that the ninja were magical and that they could do these kujikiri spirit powers and summon demons and things. And It's a bunch of BS. It's not true. I have been training in this particular martial art for over 40 years now, and I have never once seen anyone able to change weather or change into anything or summon gods or anything like that. It is just very hard work. The magic of the ninja martial arts is the training itself. Through the training, through the daily training, over periods of years, you'll be able to do things that other people won't, but you're not going to be able to transform yourself into an animal or summon a thunderstorm. It just doesn't work that way. You have to have a certain skepticism in your martial art training. You can't just believe everything you read or see in fantasy novels. That's not the real world. If you believe that stuff and you want to share it with others, you need evidence. You would need to show me how that would be done, because I would be very interested in learning how to summon a thunderstorm or conjure up a devil. I would love to have that power. So if you can email me the evidence or show me the evidence without just someone's word, which is very unreliable, I would love to learn from you, Jared, if you have that. Otherwise, listen to me. There's no such thing. Just enjoy the training. That is the magic. Barack Milner, isn't this fire nice? Writes, is Omote Gyaku the same as Kotegaeshi in Aikido? Yes, it is. Like Hon Gyaku is, our Hon Gyaku is Nikkyo in Aikido. You have Ikkyo, Nikkyo, Sankyo, Yonkyo, but that's Aikido. In the Budo, which is the older martial art, far older, what we call Omote Gyaku is Kotegaeshi, which is like an outward reversal. Everything is labeled differently in each martial art, but they're pretty much the same. They were used, in this case, to off-balance the opponent who was wearing armor. So if I was a samurai in full armor, you couldn't punch me, it wouldn't work. You couldn't kick me, it wouldn't hurt. But if I grabbed you and I had full plate steel and it was interlocked, the armor, if you grabbed that hand and you turned it with your whole body, that would cause the armor in my arm to reverse, the Gyaku part, which would be attached to my elbow and my plate up here, and that would cause my shoulder to roll, and therefore you could take my entire balance by using an omote or kotegaeshi, however you want to say it. That's what it was designed for. It wasn't designed really to break a wrist. You couldn't break someone's wrist in armor, but it was designed to grab the guy's arm and kind of use gravity and footwork and leverage to take him to the ground so that you could pull out your tanto and dispatch of him. Do they work in a modern fight? They can under certain situations, but they're very low probability. There's nothing better than just a nice punch to the nose, but they're not very effective on the street because it's extremely hard to grab someone's fist and you try to grab my wrist and put it in a wrist lock, it won't work. You'd have to distract or something, or the hand would have to be open and relaxed or straight in order to get these gyakus. It's a good question, though. They do have their place in martial arts, and they're fun to train, and they can be very effective, very painful, but they're not by any means foolproof. Again, excuse my voice. I'm still congested from my cold, so I have some tea here. Ravenstabby writes, I would like to train with you. The only problem is I stay in Scotland. Thank you for your videos. Ravenstabby, thanks for watching. We really appreciate you watching our channel. Whatever you do in Scotland, I hope you have a training group there or there's something going on. If there isn't, and our channel is all that you can get, hey, hope it helps you somehow. We are a unique martial arts school. We are not affiliated with any organization. Although I have ranking in several organizations, our dojo is autonomous. It is not affiliated with anybody. I don't have anything against organizations, really. I just want to do things my own way. You know, if you think about the new Star Wars movies, the new trilogy that just finished, when you think about it, those movies were made by producers more than directors. The producers of those movies, Disney, they have all the money. And a lot of the producers had a lot to say about those movies, and the directors were kind of brought on afterwards. It's kind of an afterthought. George Lucas, who did the first three, the first six, he was a director. So he did things, he had a vision, he did things his own way, and whether you liked the new trilogy or didn't, you have to admit they were kind of all over the place. It's because they weren't under the direction of a director. So if you know someone like a Steven Spielberg or the old guys from the 40s, 50s, and 60s, those were people who actually directed films. The producers gave the director full control over the film, usually. Nowadays, the producers have the power, have the money. And if you want to be seen in certain parts of the world, you can't direct movies a certain way because certain audiences won't allow your film into their country. Therefore, your movie will lose a ton of money. So the producers who sink the money into the film aren't filmmakers, most of them. They're terrible at making decisions. So they think, well, what will sell? You know, let's even write the script, let's go over the script, and then at the last minute we'll get someone to direct the movie. Like a Rian Johnson or J.J. Abrams or someone, but they weren't involved with the creation. Look at the difference between the Star Wars movies and the Lord of the Rings movies, because Peter Jackson had that control and he was the producer and the director on those movies, on that trilogy. And you can see how everything kind of comes together differently versus having a set of movies that are produced versus directed. Now, putting that into the martial arts, if you're part of a large organization, you have a lot of producers around, a lot of people who say, your school is going to do this, your school is going to be under the direction of me as the producer, the head guy, and I want you to do this, and I want you to give out rank that way, and I want you to do this type of testing, and I don't want you to allow certain people in your school, and I don't want you to practice that weapon, and I do not ever want to catch you training in another martial art and cross-training, and I don't want to have that guy coming to teach at your school. This is what happens in a large organization sometimes. Producers. I'm a director. I want to take all the experience I've learned over the decades and put it in my school and direct my curriculum the way I want to do things. Because I do not agree with many of my teachers in the way they do things. We're far more strict on our belts and our ranking. It's not a McDojo. It's not a belt factory. A lot of organizations don't care about rank at all. We do. At the same time, I have the freedom to do things, to direct the way I want, to bring my students up the way I was, and from all my mistakes I learned from over the years in different martial arts and having so many different teachers of different martial arts. Even this Dojo martial art channel, when you watch how I teach, how I do certain things, how I run certain things, how I speak, you may hate me or you may like it. But it's because it's not in an organization. It is an autonomous dojo where I can fail or succeed on my own merits. And my students who follow me over the years have been attracted to my particular style because it's not an organization. I haven't burned any bridges and I'm friends with everybody. And I highly respect the organizations that are around. I highly respect my teachers from the past. But I want to do things my own way. Perhaps that's arrogant, perhaps that's egotistical, perhaps that's the American spirit. You could spin it positive or negatively, but it's worked for us. It's succeeded. We're in our 14th year, and I've been training for 40. It hasn't failed me yet, so I believe we're going to continue this course throughout 2020 into the next decade, and we're going to continue to evolve and get better and better. And myself and my black belt teachers, my senior students, we're constantly revising our curriculum and getting better and better and better and getting rid of the bad stuff that's not working. And we see certain students, they're not getting good enough in a certain area, so we're concentrating on other areas. And it's just a fantastic, constant puzzle that you have to balance all these plates and try to make it better and better. And that's why I do what I do, and that's why I wake up in the morning. I love it. I love going to work and trying to make our martial art better than it was yesterday or last year. I can't say that for all the organizations I've been involved with. Lin Yi asks, it must be nice for a white middle-aged guy to be teaching a Japanese martial art. Laughing my ass off. Lin Yi, it is. It's very nice. It's fantastic. I wake up every day loving it. I love what I do, and I have for many years. It's sad seeing a comment like that because it's basically someone trying to tear down what we're doing. Could be envy, jealousy, some guy that's just mad at the world. I ask you, do you think that your place of origin defines your expertise? A lot of people sadly think that. They think if you're not a Japanese person, you can't teach a Japanese martial art. You should have no right to be teaching that. Is that correct? Is that a good way to think? I believe that prejudicial bias should never trump hard work. That same argument, you could say that you can't ever be a Japanese baseball player. Well, do Japanese baseball players exist? Of course. And some of the best in the world live over there. Carl Sagan was one of the best experts on space. He was never in space. That doesn't mean he can't be an expert on that subject. Stop using gender or someone's race as a guide of what they know. I know more about the Japanese culture than I would argue most Japanese people. I'm obsessed with it since I was 8 years old. And there are many people in Japan who know more about the West and the cowboys and that culture than most of us care about. So don't limit yourself, whether it's a gender or a race, at what you can learn. The world is too small now. The internet has made us all very close. And the knowledge that's available is astounding. There should be no reason why any of us limit ourselves on where we live, on what culture we decide to study and become an expert on. And I've seen so many people that who watch someone in Japan teaching and think that it's beautiful just because they look the part. He looks like a samurai and a ninja, so he's great, right? I'm like, no, his technique is terrible. It doesn't matter what you look like. You can be great or bad. So that's a really interesting thing that he's writing here, this Lin Yi. He's basically trying to tear me down for studying this Japanese martial art. I've done the hard work, and I didn't have to be Japanese to love that culture and to study it and to become good at it. Again, the place of origin that you live in shouldn't dictate what you know. And I encourage anyone out there, no matter what you look like, how old you are, whatever your background is, whether you have money or you don't, if you are looking at me right now on this screen, you are a fortunate person. Clearly you have a computer, you have the intellect to sit here and understand what I'm saying. You have some means more than the last 600 years of culture. We are living in a time that is so fortunate. We have so much more money than we know what to do with. We live way longer than any of our ancestors. We have less suffering because of medicine and stuff like that. We don't die of bacterial diseases as much. We have less war than ever before. All of these things, we need to remember how lucky we are to live in the time that we live in. Don't limit yourself like Lin Yi. You don't want to be that narrow-minded. And stereotyping that all Japanese people know martial arts is another bigoted thing. I can't tell you how many people, sadly, over the years have said, oh, that guy's Asian, he must know something. It's like, no. Stop thinking that way. Stop thinking in such stereotypical dribble. Just look at the person for who they are. Whether they know something or not, just look at them for who they are. Doesn't matter what they look like. Just get to know that person. Who cares if they are or are not an expert? Sean from San Diego says, I noticed that Soke Hatsumi sits down after he teaches a technique at the Hombu Dojo in Japan. Why doesn't he engage more with his students? Sean, Hatsumi Sensei is 88 years old. He can't do what he used to do. The fact that he is out there training or teaching a couple of days a week is unbelievably rare and fantastic, and I admire him for that. Would you and I be so lucky to be that age and be able to step out on the mat and teach and have someone care? The reason he has to sit down is because he is elderly. He gets around pretty well. He's very flexible, but the man is very old. So he's not 40 anymore. He's 88. So don't fault him for coming out and teaching and going and sitting down and resting. He has to. He's lost his strength. He's lost a lot of stuff, as we all do as we get older. We lose strength. You lose speed. You lose all kinds of stuff. You have to do the best you can at whatever age you are. Yes, he doesn't train the way he used to. He's not as hard as he used to be because he's not that age anymore. When I was 20, I was a beast. I was just like wrecking everybody with my strength and my speed. And I mean, I was beating people up and fighting and competing and sparring and ground fighting and tapping people out left and right. But now that I'm 50, I move differently because I'm older. I don't need the strength and the speed that I used to because I've been doing it so long that I can get the job done with half the effort. And Hatsumi is no different. He's, 30, almost 40 years older than 30 something years older than I am, almost 40. So again, I hope at that age that I can step out on the mat. If I live that long, I doubt I will. He's lived a long and healthy life. So don't fault him. The reason he has to sit down is simply because of his age. It's not because he's mean or he's detached from his students. He just has to do the best he can until he has to stop. And if he can only come in 1 day a week or 2, that's better than 0. It's better than him sitting at home, because once you stop doing what you love doing, you will die probably very quickly. You have to continue to work to keep your brain and your body moving, or atrophy sets in and you just kind of disappear quickly. I admire him for all he does at his age. Marko Makarov Helio asks, do you agree with historian Anthony Cummins about there being no modern organization being able to demonstrate any evidence of the historical lineage from the Bujinkan, Genbukan, or Jininkan? People ask me a lot about Anthony Cummins. He's a historian, and I don't disagree with what he's saying. He's basically saying that none of the modern ninjutsu schools have any real lineage. He's asked many people out there, what he calls claimants, to provide evidence of their lineage, of their connection to the historical ninja, because he believes in his writings from his research, and he's done a lot of it in Japan, that what we're seeing being taught in the last 30 or 40 years since the 80s and the 70s is not real. It's a modern take on the ninja as far as shuriken and swords and stuff and the costumes. And he has a lot of books out there. I've read them all. The Bansen Shukai, all of these things, the Shoninki, all of these, what he calls legitimate manuals from samurai and ninja martial arts. I don't disagree with. He could very well be right in everything he's saying. I don't know. I wish and I hope to see. He just did a documentary called The Man Who Killed the Ninja. Just came out, talking about him challenging all the modern ninja teachers out there. And he asked them to be part of this movie, this documentary, and almost all of them are silent. They didn't want to be part of it. And he claims they didn't want to be part of it because they have something to hide, or they're afraid, or they just don't have the evidence. They're living in a fantasy world. He might not be wrong. I don't know. I'm not a historian. I'm not an expert in that. I'm an expert in a lot of things with the ninja and the samurai, but I'm not a historian. I don't care about all of that stuff. I would like to see Anthony try to debate historians from modern organizations, maybe like a Shawna Skew or someone who just finished his book. Someone that knows what they're talking about. A lot of the people that write books don't have a lot of historical knowledge. They were just told by their teachers, did a little bit of research, and put books out. Anthony's books are very well researched by Japanese people from that culture, and he's pulling up stuff that I've never seen before, I was never taught. So his books are controversial, yet he might be right. He might be wrong. He's a nice guy. I don't believe he's confrontational at all. I believe that if you sat down with him, he would gladly go over the evidence with you, and perhaps you could come to a meeting of the minds. A lot of people hate him. They consider him a traitor. I don't know why. He's just kind of shining a light on the dark shadow of the ninja reputation. He's done a good job. He has over 10 books now, and he's not stopping. He's going to continue to make sure that we practitioners of Budo and ninjutsu know that there's another side to the history that people aren't telling us about or don't know about. That's not to say the people in the modern organizations are lying. It's not at all what he's saying. He just believes that they're misinformed. And I'm curious to see this year and next year what's going to happen, if more people will come out and talk to him. I hope to see that. I hope to see a meeting of the minds, a round table of historical people who know far more than I do that can sit there and discuss this and kind of shed light on it. I would love to see that. And then we can get on with the other training that we all know and love. I'm curious to see what happens in the future. Pard writes about a sword video. He says, I want to know what happens when the guy uses wild and fast slashes with a sword instead of slow choreography. When you watch a video from our dojo or anyone's channel, we're showing you a small snippet of what we do. That particular night, at that particular hour, with those particular people, with that particular weapon. You're only seeing one or two techniques out of hundreds, and you're only seeing one way of doing something. You're seeing a principle being taught. You're seeing a small teaching, but you're not seeing all the what ifs. So in any video that we show, you're going to see me, if I'm teaching something, showing a technique the way it was taught to me or the way I believe it to be practical for this particular movement. But what we have to do as teachers, as we teach, is stop time. It's not like a real fight where you're moving and then he's moving and you're reacting to what he's doing and the unpredictability of a real fight. You have to stop time in order to give the information to the students so that they can process it and practice it. It has to develop muscle memory. There's no way I could go out there and say, I have done that, and said, come at me however you want, as fast as you want, I'm going to win. And then film that and say, go do that. You can't. You have to break down the movements. So if a guy's with a sword and he's in Dojo and he cuts down, well, that's one out of a million ways he could have attacked you. So that's what we're dealing with. So when you say the guy could have slashed at you this way, I know that. I know, we all know that as martial art teachers. We know that the guy could have moved here and done this and it would have changed everything. But you have to deal with the video that's being presented to you and the teaching that's being presented. As a teacher, we know that there are 1,000 things that can change. The minute that he moves his foot, the whole technique changes. But we're sticking with and showing this principle so that you can go and practice it in your dojo with your own friends. And the more principles you have, the more pieces of a martial art puzzle, the better martial artist you'll be. Because if you just went out and sparred and did no technique, you would be a mess and you would be killed quickly. You have to practice technique a certain way. Then you have to resist the technique if you're a good school, and you'll break down the technique. What if it fails, or the guy grabs you, or he kicks you, or he trips, or you slip in the mud? You address these things later after you have practiced the principles 1,000 times. You have to start slow and then work your way up. You can't just assume it's a Jackie Chan film to start with. Real training doesn't work that way. You have to break it down into the basics and then add the more advanced concepts like resistance, full speed and strength, and things like that much, much, much later in your training. That's why it's important to not just watch videos on YouTube, but to actually physically train at a dojo. It's completely different watching a video than it is actually being out on the mat and working with the teacher and the student and having a punch actually come at your nose. It's very easy to sit at home on a couch and judge what you see if you haven't exactly experienced it in the real world. DP writes, thank you, Sensei. Again, I feel that I've gained some or have glimpsed the deeper knowledge that can come from years of training. You are great at exposing that for people. You have multiple times reignited my passion and love for training in this martial art from what you say and do. So thank you. Thank you, DP. It's little notes like that that really keep us going. We're by no means a perfect school. We make a lot of mistakes. We're always changing things, evolving, as I've said. But we do a lot of right, too. We do a lot of good things. And again, you're not going to get much BS at our school. We try to keep it real. When the camera shuts off, we really get to work. And we ask the tough questions. We ask, what if the guy does this? What if he does that? What if there are 3 guys instead of 1? Or how do we do this technique on the ground from a mount position instead of a sword? What if I have a cell phone? How do I use that in battle? I'm having this problem in my life. Can I use this martial art principle to ease my suffering in this area? Or, hey, I'm having this issue with my wife. Can we use this samurai precept to help me out in my relationships? All of these things we try to address. And I'm so happy that it benefits a couple of you out there who don't have the luxury of training at a school because of finances or where you live, or there's just nothing around, or what's around you don't like. To be able to tune into our little channel and to enjoy what we're saying and what we're doing, we really appreciate it very, very much. Thank you, DP, for that kind and very thoughtful comment. Shawna in North Carolina asks, how do I get over the hump in my training? I have hit a low point and am dealing with personal issues with my boyfriend. I have asked him to train with me, but he thinks training is stupid. Do you have any advice? Shawna in North Carolina, dump him. If you have someone in your life and you are passionate about training and he is trying to keep you away from that, he's probably not the man for you. What happens a lot in training is a spouse or a loved one will often get jealous and envious if you are going to the dojo a couple nights a week and training and they are not involved. Many times over the years I've seen husbands and wives argue about training. Say the wife wants to go to get some self-defense lessons. She wants to feel more empowered. She wants to feel stronger. And maybe she was attacked at some point. She's fearful. A lot of husbands don't like that. They get very jealous. How dare you go to that school, they say to their wife. You're training with all those young guys over there. Yeah, what are you going to start to go out with them? And what they're thinking is, you're going to become so good and so powerful that you're going to leave me. That's what the husband often thinks. It's a very male machismo thing to think. The stronger she gets, she's going to leave me for one of them because he doesn't have confidence. When in reality, when you allow the person that you love to go and train separately, individually, they often love you more because you're not stifling them, you're not controlling them, you're not telling them what they can and can't do with their own life and free time. So poor Shawna here is being attacked by her boyfriend. He thinks it's stupid when she has a passion for martial arts. And it's happened to me myself. I've dated women over the years who didn't support what I did. Guess how long they lasted in my life? Not much, not very long. The women that have supported me are still in my life because they allow me to go and train and do what I want to do. I can be a better husband. I can be a better boyfriend. I can be a better father, a better businessman, a better brother, a better son. All these things we can be better at because of the training, not in spite of it. And this is a very real issue out there. Many of you watching right now are having trouble with your loved one because they're trying to pull you away from your endeavor, from your goal, from your dream. I caution us all to communicate heavily and to tell this person, look, I need this training. I need these few hours a week to go and work on this. I love it. It makes me feel stronger. It makes me feel more compassionate. It makes me younger. It makes me better at everything I do. It makes me want to provide more. It makes me want to work harder and make more money and be more successful. I have fun doing it. I laugh. I come home de-stressed. I'm not mad at work anymore. I'm not mad at my boss. Anything that happens at home I can deal with better because of my training. How dare someone at home be so selfish to try to take that away from someone who they love? No, they're trying to control that person. So Shawna, find someone new, or talk to your boyfriend and say, look, buddy, I'm going to go train twice a week, whether you like it or not, because it makes me feel good. And you know how many people I've seen over the years that have trained and their spouse has loved it because they thought they were more attractive because they were training? You know, would you rather just lay on the couch all day and watch TV and drink beer? Or would you rather have your spouse out doing something to improve themselves? I, for one, would rather have my loved one out there learning new things, experiencing new things, getting smarter and stronger. And then when she comes home, I can talk about it with her and say, hey, what'd you learn today at the dojo? That would be a fantastic relationship. But so sadly, so often they'll go home and say, did you go to that dojo again? You're going to leave me, aren't you? That's what they're thinking. You're going to leave me for someone at the dojo. It's so sad. It's so high schoolish. But it does happen. If you are out there and you are lucky enough to have a loved one who supports your training, boy, you are lucky. You are set. You are good to go. But poor Shawna it's not unusual, Shawna. You're not alone. You have to talk to this guy and tell him, look, it's me. You have to love me for what I love to do. You can't control me. I'm an individual. So that's my advice to you, Shawna. Either talk to him, and if he continues to make your life miserable, dump him. Find someone at the dojo who's more positive and thinks like you. Someone who's going to love you for who you are, not what they want you to be. So good luck to you, Shawna. Let me know. Please follow up with that. I'd like to know what happens, okay? But I've been through this myself, and I've known countless people who have been in your situation. You're not alone. Communicate it and then fix it. Let 2020 be the year that you find someone who loves you for who you are. All right, I've rambled so long. The fire's getting low. My voice is going because of my cough. Excuse me. How do we get your modern techniques at home? I live in Johannesburg, South Africa. Wow. You can order our instructional DVDs through eBay. We do have a shop on eBay. If you just research the dojo martial arts DVDs, you'll see them come up. We get a lot of orders from people from around the world, but the shipping to some of the countries is insanely expensive. So I've had a lot of people that have ordered DVDs through our school that we've had to refund them, or they found out the shipping was going to be $40 to Spain or France or wherever, and they canceled the order. They didn't realize it was going to be so expensive. And that has nothing to do with us. The USPS has gone way up in price. And even UPS, FedEx, all these shipping organizations have to make a living. So they keep going up in cost. And to ship internationally is extremely expensive. And a lot of people nowadays don't even want DVDs. They just want to download the damn thing on their desktop and sit there and watch it. They want to either stream it or just buy it. So I'm working with a student that is going to help us set up a website in the early part of this coming year that will have our DVDs where you can just click and download it to your desktop. So you don't have to worry about shipping or anything. It'll be an instant download, and we'll have hundreds of DVDs and hundreds of teachings available in the next coming years for those of you out there who live in faraway countries like Johannesburg, places where you can't get a DVD or the shipping's too much. You'll just be able to access it through your computer and download it. That's just the way of modernity, and we're going to embrace the technology rather than hinder you. So please be patient. In the next month or two, we're going to be filming a level 2 curriculum DVD, which covers the higher elements of our martial art in our school. We've already done the level 1 basics, which is called Striking the Tree, which is our level 1 curriculum. This year we're going to do the level 2 and the level 3, which are about 40 to 50 more techniques that you can learn our particular brand of martial art in your school. So that's coming up in the next couple months. We'll film it, we'll have them edit it, and then we'll get it on the new website. And we'll also have it in DVD form, so you can buy it on eBay if you want. Our curriculum book people ask about. We have a modern curriculum book, which is 60 or 70 pages of techniques. And then we also have a classical curriculum, which is the old martial art that we also study, the old samurai arts. I'm working on a book. It's almost done. I have about 60,000 words written. That's more of a philosophical book based off of my training in philosophy and my background in that area. It's not a martial art technique book. It's more of philosophical thinkings over the years that I've learned from the martial arts. That'll be out or finished, I hope, this year. And once that's edited, it'll be out in book form next year. So there's a lot we're doing at our school. We constantly try to improve ourselves and get better, as well as, of course, focus on our in-house students. That's more important than anything we do externally on this channel. Is we're always training at our school, several hours per day, several days per week. But those of you out there that are watching this who can't come and train with me at our school, we really appreciate you watching our channel. And we hope that the little things that we throw out there into the universe that you can steal and take and use or listen to, and it somehow benefits your life and your training with your teachers and your style, then we can live in peace and we've done our job. On behalf of all of us, on behalf of the fire and the tea and everything else, I want to thank you so much. I wish you the best of New Year's. I hope that all of your dreams, your goals and wishes will come true with your hard effort and your consistency. And I wish you health and happiness and all good things in the next year to come. Until next time, my friends, enjoy your training. This is Todd Norcross. Have a great night.